Well, of course, I did go to the Earls Court concerts. I went to all of them, and Blackbush. And it was just a thrill because, he hadn't been here except for the Isle of Wight. In '69, he hadn't been for 12 years when he came for those Earls Court concerts in '78. And no one knew what he would sound like, what his voice would be like. And, people had said, oh, we saw the Stones there in Earls Court. The sound was so bad you couldn't tell what they were singing, The sound was absolutely crystal clear for Bob. And at the time, I didn't know any of this stuff about, he'd gone to see Neil Diamond and he'd been impressed by Neil's setup, No, I didn't think it was. I didn't think there was anything remotely kind of to be adversely critical about. I thought it was completely thrilling from start to finish, and he was so there. It was magnificent, and so of course that maybe seeps into how you feel about Street Legal, and certainly it's part of why. It's why Budokan is a disappointment, because it was so poor a representative of how it felt to be at those concerts.
Yeah.
And of course then, if you go on and listen to the American concerts that he did after, then it's different again. It's very different. But I also, I went to the Paris shows as well. And they were just heavenly. Just
early July '78. Have I got that about right?
Yeah.
I think I've heard of The Man in Me from one of those Paris concerts. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I went over for the Paris concerts and stayed at the same hotel as Bob, which was the Hotel Maurice, which is extremely expensive and very splendid. They were having a party after one of the shows in the basement, Bob's lot. I went down there and they had to let me in because I had a key. I was a resident, and it was just a bar, But they were quite reluctant to let anybody in except Bob's own entourage. And I'd met him backstage at one of the Earls Court concerts, and I didn't want to talk to him again at Paris because. I knew he wouldn't want to talk to me again. It was as simple as that. The record company woman went and said something about, would you like to say hello again to Michael Gray? And very predictably he said, no. and so, but I didn't ask her to ask him. I wouldn't have asked him. I got to meet him because he was aware of my book, but didn't want to admit it.
Yes.
And so he got the London record company woman to ring up one morning and say, Bob says, would you like to come backstage and say hello? I said, yeah, I think I could manage that. And I was getting divorced at the time, and so I was going to these 6 Earls Court shows with a different person each night.
Yeah.
And the night that I was asked to go and say hello to Bob, I was taking my son, who was then 9. And that was great as it happened, because, Bob does not do small talk. And he was literally loitering about in this backstage, behind the stage. It was pitch dark, more or less, and he was wearing dark glasses.
Pumping into things.
And he had his hair out like very 66-ish. And people were in this white hospitality room. And at one point I saw him put his head round the door to peer at us just for a moment. And it was exactly like one of the sort of shots from the inside sleeve of Blonde on Blonde. It was just so great. Anyway, people were brought out to meet Bob in little groups of 2 and 3. So my son and I were brought out along with Robert Shelton. Well, of course, they knew each other well, and they had an uneasy relationship because, Robert Shelton knew that he had helped Bob's career get kick-started with the review in the New York Times. And Bob, of course, resented feeling that he owed anybody anything, especially by then, But nevertheless, they still talked to each other each time Bob came to England, because that's where Robert Shelton was living by then. And when we were brought out, there were already 3 people standing around Bob. and Bob was talking to one of them. I don't know who that was. But the other two standing around, not being spoken to by Bob, were Bianca Jagger and Jack Nicholson. This was a fairly heavy-duty occasion, as far as I was concerned. And in those days, nobody asked Bob Dylan for their autograph. It was just an unspoken thing that nobody dared do. I mean, years later, loads of people did. But then you didn't. You could ask anyone else, but not Bob. But my son didn't know that. And so the rather beautiful 1978 tour program was in his hands, and he found himself without a pen, as you do. And so he turned to this woman and said, "Excuse me, have you got a pen, please?"
Lady.
And she fussed in her Nicaraguan peasant designer handbag and produced this rather naff biro and thrust it at my son. And he said to Bob, "Excuse me, can you sign this, please?" And Bob got down on one knee to be on a level with my son and signed it for him and wrote a very un-Dylan-esque thing, which was, well, it seemed un-Dylan-esque at the time. He wrote, "Be safe always, best wishes, Bob Dylan." And he wrote it all with his left hand. And I said, "I'll look after that." And I'm still looking after that. My son will be 50 in July.
Right.
So I love the fact that Jack Nicholson was there. Nobody asked him for his autograph, presumably. So
No. And Jack, of course, Jack was very happy. He was just standing around there, smiling.
Yeah.
And Bianca Jagger was fuming at being ignored as she saw it, But Bob was talking to whoever he was talking to. And I remember very little, because when it's something that's so important to you and so unimportant to him, it's not that I expected anything. I knew it would be like that, but it's still, my mind went completely blank about the whole experience for quite a long time afterwards. But I just remember a couple of snatches of conversation, really with Robert Shelton. I still smoked cigarettes in those days, and Bob smoked 2 of my Marlboro cigarettes. And so, of course, I've kept the packet. Serious critic of his work,
Did he smoke in the European way, like they talk about in Rolling Thunder?
I didn't notice that. But I remember Robert Shelton saying to him, perhaps a little cattily, that the reviews of the warm-up shows in Japan had one of the reviews had said that the backing singers sounded like the Supremes, and I remember Bob said, "Oh no, not the Supremes, the Raylettes maybe."
Yes, absolutely. And was Street Legal out by then? I know that Baby
Yes.
Stop Crying was a single, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, it was out.
And they're the same. I mean, if we, for example, were to hear a live Earls Court 78 album, would we be hearing the flutes and things like that, like we hear on Budokan, or was it a different setup?
Yeah, but they weren't so high in the mix, maybe.
Yeah. I'd be very interested to hear that, I must say.
I loved having things like the saxophone, and I've always loved it when Bob has a piano, whether it's him or someone else playing it. I mean, I love the sort of grungy, stripped down, nothing but guitar, bass, and drums. But I also love the richer, more varied sounds. It's called Outtakes on Bob Dylan, and it's just assembling stuff that I've written that never got into any of the books. And
So it's your bootleg series.
it is my official bootleg series, yes.